Back to another edition of Eye on the Issues. Of course, the legislative session in Wyoming is underway, and that's what we're talking about today. Joining me right now is Representative House District 50, Rachel Rodriguez Williams. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
You bet. Now, obviously, the session is, I guess, about almost a week in. Let's begin, if we can, by talking about House Bill 204, which was just, I guess, added in near the latter part of the week, and that is regarding the decriminalization of cannabis. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, so it was added pretty late. Not uncommon for a legislative session. The pro-THC advocates tend to do that. So I, first of all, oppose this bill. I oppose the decriminalization of THC and any other bills that we might perhaps see that reduce or eliminate penalties for THC in the state of Wyoming.
Okay, let's backtrack for a quick second. So what's your sense as to how the session is going so far?
The session has been moving really fast. It's a budget session. And so in order for any bill to be introduced, it takes a 2/3 majority of the body.
Right. And so if with that being the case, obviously something's got to have a lot of support. So has HB 204 gotten that level of support to move in, or has it just been introduced? Where does it stand?
Yeah, so it is posted on the legislative website. I don't foresee it having much support. It is sponsored by the minority party in the legislature. We have a supermajority of Republicans in the House of Representatives. There have been several bills in the past that have attempted to decriminalize and all the way to fully on legalize recreational marijuana, and they have been really opposed by the supermajority and also received a lot of pushback from the people of Wyoming. So I don't foresee it having much support.
Got it. That's a good thing. We've done a lot of interviews about marijuana and the impacts that it's had on states like Colorado and other ones that have had it legalized for a while, and it's not really been a pretty sight. Let's talk about some of the other measures that you
Sure.
care about this session. What's on your radar?
So for my constituents, one of the top priority issues is the rise in property taxes because our state does not have a cap on property taxes. We definitely need reform. There have been some programs that have provided rebates and returns for my constituents, but not everybody has been eligible for those. Another top priority is school choice. This session, we have a bill titled Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act. It's House Bill 128, and it was sponsored by Representative Ocean Andrew, who's out of Laramie. And essentially what that bill does is it provides universal school choice for everybody. So there's no income tax on our income cap on it. So essentially there's the criteria for the ESA is everybody's eligible. It provided $6,000, I believe, per a student. And that's a great opportunity for Wyoming families. This, again, is an important issue and something that the people of Wyoming truly support.
So let me ask you a question about that. So what is the reasoning? School choice seems to make so much sense. What is the reasoning for the other side to push back against that?
The other side, I think, has a different philosophy when it comes to funding school choice and government involvement. There seems to be this notion that government still needs to have their hand on what choices families are making and how they choose to educate their children. And so when you look at universal school choice, this bill in particular, it had a carve out for homeschool families. So it made it an option as to whether or not they wanted to pay for it or use it as a secondary option to pay for curriculum and books and so forth, materials. And so that was the bill that I chose to co-sponsor, which again was House Bill 128.
And I know the last legislative session, there were certain measures that were not taken out of the speaker's desk. Do you have any concern about any of the ones that you're in support of, that could happen again, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So HB 128 is again in the speaker's desk. The House Education Committee did draft another piece of legislation, which I do not support because again, it has too heavy of a hand of the government on it, and the way that they've chosen to finance or to allocate the funding for that bill definitely grows government. And so I am not in support of that bill. Um, Again, it is still in the speaker's drawer. There is another bill that's out there that is still watered down. It's not a universal school choice bill. And so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, I know there were a couple other measures I know we wanted to chat about. One being HB 30, I believe it's a Controlled Substances Act. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So that bill came out of Judiciary, and I serve as a vice chair of House Judiciary. And essentially, what it does is it eliminates the form of a controlled substance from the required elements. And under that bill, I think it is important because what we're seeing is controlled substances in different forms. As you know, we talked a little bit about THC, and it's not, the marijuana of the 1960s and 70s. The potency is high. These narcotics, Schedule 1 drugs, are coming in different forms. So they're coming in wax, they're coming in shatter, they're coming in dabs, in all sorts of different products that are edible and so forth. And so we really need to accommodate our state crime lab and our law enforcement officers, and to help streamline this new trend that's infiltrating our state, and make sure that our laws are accommodating to it.
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. And when it comes to the strength and the potency of the marijuana of today versus 30 or 40 years ago, it's not even just night and day. It's ridiculously stronger. And so many of the people that I've interviewed, doctors that I've interviewed, have really said that is, people need to really pay attention to that, because that changes the whole equation when it comes to people smoking a couple joints during the week versus 30 years ago versus what they're going to smoke today.
Yeah. Yep. And the risks out there right now are just astronomical. With the open border and the increase in fentanyl that we're seeing across the Western states, there really is a danger out there when you choose to use, when you take that risk. But also, you have an industry that's choosing to normalize these products. I mean, they're targeting our youth, and they're attempting to create lifelong users.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. And there's a bill called SF 32, which have limitations on psychoactive substances. The reason I'm bringing this up is because there have been a number of instances where there's been some shooters, unfortunately, around this country. And when we find out more about their background and what they've been involved in, we hear more about some kind of substance that they've been taking that they took prior to their incidents. Can you talk to me about SF 32 a little bit?
Yeah, I believe that's the is that the bill that closes the loophole on Delta 8?
Yeah, well, it's called hemp limitations on psychoactive substances.
Yeah, so what we're attempting to do is to close that loophole that was created in the farm bill in Congress. And we're an ag community. We're trying to protect our farmers and that industry. But most importantly, what we're trying to do is protect the health and well-being of Wyomingites, because what's happening is they're using synthetic substances and getting away with selling these drugs, these products that make people high. in our stores. There's storefronts throughout the state, and so we're attempting to close the loophole. Again, all of this is really just a strong effort to normalize THC, and their end goal is to legalize what they call recreational marijuana. And as we know, there are risks associated with consumption and use. Ultimately, I believe that this destroys family units and again creates lifelong users when it comes to targeting our children.
So for people that are going to be watching this, that obviously live in the state of Wyoming and that are against decriminalization or legalization of marijuana, what can they do from their standpoint in terms of reaching out to their lawmakers to make sure that their voices are heard?
Yeah, so I would definitely start with contacting your local legislature. You can go on the Wyoming legislature website. You can look up your district, your legislator's cell phone number, email should be on there. Reach out to them. Let them know you oppose you oppose this bill. You oppose the concept of legalization and why. If you're not familiar with today's potency and the commercialization that's going on, it's not too difficult to look at some studies online based on states like Colorado or Washington, California. We have a lot to learn from those states that legalized, and really we don't need to be a petri dish.
And that is the truth. There are two other measures that I wanted to touch base on. They both have to do with newborn children. One is newborn child safe havens. It's HB 90, and then there's HB 155, newborn safety device funding. Can we talk a little bit about those?
Sure. So I actually was a prime sponsor on both of those bills. The first one essentially just changes our safe haven law from a newborn baby's age at 14 days to, I drafted it at 60 days. So if a parent chooses to, feels like they can't parent that baby anymore, they can go to a safe haven location and turn over their baby to safe care. And so it saves the lives of babies. We've all read horror stories where a baby's been found in a dumpster or someplace unsafe and been rescued by first responders. And so this provides another alternative for parents that are in crisis situations to relinquish their babies. The second bill was a funding allocation for newborn safety devices for safe haven providers. It had a $300,000 one-time grant opportunity that would be managed through the Department of Family Services. And safe haven providers would be eligible to apply for these grants and install newborn safety devices. So that my hope was that each county had a location that parents could relinquish their babies in a safe manner.
What a great idea. Great idea. Both great ideas. So looking forward, as this session continues, what are you hoping for?
I am hoping that we can pass legislation that provides relief for Wyomingites when it comes to property taxes. And also we begin the conversation and a process in place for reform. Unfortunately, during the COVID years, 2020, 2021, there were people from out of state flooding into Wyoming because their states were on lockdown. And our state was closed too, but there was a little bit more freedom than other states. And so we have seen an influx of out-of-staters come into all sorts of towns throughout our state. And so there's a rise in our property values. And again, unfortunately, we have no cap. So I'm hoping that we can not tax people out of their homes anymore, and that people can afford to live that have lived here for many, many years that are on fixed incomes.
Yeah, good to hear. So I need to ask you this one last question. So what do you love most about living in the state of Wyoming?
Wyoming is God's country. Wyoming is a beautiful place to raise a family. I live just about 45 minutes from the East Gate to Yellowstone National Park. And
Oh,
so
nice.
wildlife is in abundance. It's a safe place to live, and the winters are a little harsh. They're not for everybody, but Wyoming is essentially what America used to be, and it's worth fighting for. We are under attack, by no doubt. There are people that want to change Wyoming. They want us to become a state like Colorado, and so I believe it's really important for us to preserve our state, our freedom, and pass laws essentially that grant us that liberty, that continue to grant us that freedom, that our military and first responders continue to fight for every day on our behalf.
Good to hear. Obviously, there's a lot on the table. There's a lot of bills, a lot of numbers. So thank you for kind of wading your way through that with us. Really appreciate it. So if you want to learn more about what's happening around the state of Wyoming and about the Wyoming Liberty Group, go to ywliberty.org. A lot of great information, a lot of great interviews there. Sign up for our newsletter. Be sure to do it. Thanks for watching.